In a high-level diplomatic meeting broadcast across major news networks, Donald Trump leaned forward with a signature scowl, jabbing a finger toward Ibrahim Traoré. "Bow to the West," he barked, voice thick with disdain. The room went quiet. Advisors held their breath. Cameras zoomed in, expecting submission. But Traoré? He laughed, not a polite chuckle, not a political smirk, a deep, fearless laugh that echoed like thunder in a cathedral. He slowly rose, eyes never leaving Trump's. "Bow?" he repeated, then tilted his head mockingly. "To a continent on fire? To the ashes of broken promises? No, Mr. Trump, the West is on its knees, and you still don't know it." The room erupted, not in applause, but in chaos. Western aides scrambled to manage optics, while African delegates rose, some nodding, some visibly empowered. Traoré wasn't just answering a man. He was speaking to centuries of imposed order, to years of exploited minerals, silenced leaders, and manipulated elections. Trump, red-faced, tried to respond, but Traoré stepped forward, calm and calculated. "You called us weak," he said, "but your empires crumble, your dollars inflate, your wars exhaust you. Meanwhile, Africa learns, unites, and rises. We will not bow, not to you, not to your history." In that moment, the narrative shifted. Social media exploded. #WeDon'tBow trended globally. African youth shared clips of Traoré's defiance. Analysts debated, was this the dawn of a new bloc? A shift in global influence? And behind closed doors, nervous Western diplomats whispered one truth they'd never dare say aloud: Traoré just made Trump look powerless. The G20 summit was supposed to be diplomatic, it was supposed to be civil, but when Donald Trump took the microphone and snarled, "Bow to the West," all pretense of diplomacy vanished. Ibrahim Traoré stood still, stoic, unreadable. Cameras focused in. The room buzzed with tension. Then, with surgical precision, Traoré picked up his own mic. "You ask Africa to kneel," he said, voice calm but cutting. "You, whose institutions crumble under debt and division. You, who chase shadows in deserts while your own streets burn with protest." The silence in the room turned heavy. "History has a pattern," Traoré continued. "Empires rise, empires rot, and those who once gave orders beg for relevance." He turned, sweeping his gaze across the Western Bloc. "Africa is no longer yours to command. We're not scared, we're not silent, and we're certainly not kneeling." Trump's face twitched. He tried to interrupt, but Traoré didn't flinch. "Your idea of power is illusion," he said. "You drop bombs, then call it diplomacy. You steal resources, then call it aid. And now, standing knee-deep in your own decline, you still imagine you hold the leash." Applause erupted, not from the West, but from leaders long ignored: South America, Asia, the African Union. The tide was turning. Outside the summit, millions watched the moment unfold in real time. Memes, quotes, and hashtags surged. The phrase, "We don't kneel," became a rallying cry. Young people across the global South posted Traoré's speech with captions like, "This is what leadership sounds like." It wasn't just a clapback, it was a line in the sand. The days of quiet obedience were over. And as the West sat stunned, Traoré leaned back in his seat and whispered to an aide, "Let them bark. Lions don't kneel to dogs." The press room was suffocating, tight with flashbulbs, thick with silence. Trump had just finished a roaring speech at the so-called New World Unity conference. His words echoed like iron gates slamming shut. "The West built this world. The rest of you simply live in it. So bow, or be broken." Some leaders shifted in discomfort. Others clapped out of habit. But Ibrahim Traoré? He laughed, not a chuckle. A full-bodied, shoulder-shaking laugh that turned heads and made microphones buzz with sudden static. Then he stood. "You still think this is 1950, Traoré said calmly, eyes locked on Trump. "You think we'll kneel because you say the word civilization louder than anyone else? You think we don't see the rot in your empire?" The silence turned lethal. Traoré leaned into the mic. "Look around. Your nations burn from within. Your people can't afford homes. Your streets are filled with anger, and you are here demanding others kneel." He paused, then delivered the kill shot. "The only thing kneeling is your legacy." Gasps, stiff backs. A few phones slipped from hands in the shock. America talks of strength, Traoré went on, voice calm and lethal. Yet every time the world turns, it's not towards your flags. It's away. Your bombs don't scare us. Your banks don't own us. And your insults? He glanced at Trump, they amuse us. Online, the moment went nuclear. Hashtags like hashtag Traoré Truth and hashtag We Stand Tall flooded timelines. TikTok edits showed Traoré's laugh on loop. Journalists called it a turning point, a fracture in Western arrogance. Backstage, Trump demanded his aides do damage control, but it was too late. The world had heard Traoré speak truth to power, and laugh while doing it. The conference hall reeked of entitlement. Velvet curtains, polished marble floors, and a golden podium, symbols of a world clinging to its illusion of control. Trump gripped the mic like it was still 2016. His voice thundered through the room. You people forget who built the world you live in. Bow to the West, or get left behind. The applause was weak, mechanical, but one man didn't clap. Ibrahim Traoré sat still, calm, the storm before the storm. He rose slowly. Every eye followed him. He didn't need to shout. His voice was steady, like the rumble before an eruption. The West, he repeated. You mean the fading shadow of an empire built on broken backs and stolen breath? Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras zoomed in. Even Trump blinked. You lecture us on civilization while your streets collapse under the weight of your own greed. You speak of order while your people fight over crumbs. You call it power, what I see is panic. Trump tried to interrupt. Traoré raised a hand. The room obeyed. You ordered us to bow, but you're the ones scrambling to hold on to relevance. You built your nations on our gold, our labor, our silence, but we are silent no more. The audience was frozen. A journalist dropped his pen. And now you demand submission, Traoré said, narrowing his gaze. The West is already on its knees, begging history to forget. The silence afterward was electric. Like a revolution held in a breath. On social media, the moment exploded. Hashtag Traoré does not bow trended globally. Young Africans stitched his words onto videos, shirts, graffiti. Editorials called it a verbal declaration of independence. Trump's team scrambled, spinning narratives, but the damage was done. Traoré didn't just reject the demand to kneel. He shattered the illusion that the West still stood tall. In a gilded hall in Brussels, the air was thick with pride and paranoia. Flags of Western powers hung from marble columns like reminders of old glory, while leaders traded empty affirmations of dominance. Trump took the stage with his trademark scowl, clenching the podium like it owed him something. Africa will bow, he declared, because history favors the strong, and we wrote the rules. The room erupted in polite applause, the kind that masks fear. But in the crowd, Ibrahim Traoré rose, not with anger, but with certainty. He didn't shout, he didn't flinch. He simply stepped forward and began. You wrote rules, he said, with blood as ink and chains as binding. But don't confuse a forced silence with consent. Trump raised an eyebrow. Traoré continued. You come to us as if the pages of history haven't turned. But they have, and this chapter, we write ourselves. Reporters leaned in. Cameras locked onto him. The world listened. You say bow, but what I see is a West collapsing under its own arrogance. While we rise, not to mimic your empires, but to bury them. A hush fell over the chamber. Even the translators paused. You've called us weak, but we endured what would have broken you. You mocked us, yet now you fear us, not because of what we were, but because of who we're becoming. Traoré's voice, low and steady, echoed like prophecy. So go ahead, order your bows, demand your loyalty, but remember this, empires fall. And when they do, it is not to the sound of war, but to the roar of those who once whispered. By the time Traoré finished, no one clapped. They didn't need to. The silence spoke louder than any applause. His words carved a moment into the memory of the world. Online, the speech went viral. Edits paired his voice with slow-motion images of liberation movements. Headlines read, The General Who Wouldn't Kneel. Youth across continents stood taller, fists raised, not in violence, but in vindication. The moment Trump's words echoed, bow to the West, there was a collective smirk on the faces of those who had long been underestimated. But no one smirked louder than Ibrahim Traoré. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't sarcasm. It was revelation, a quiet, piercing understanding of history's shifting tide. "You say power," Traoré replied. "I say desperation." In a televised summit with global leaders watching, Trump raised his glass and smiled like a conqueror. But Traoré didn't toast. He stood, expression calm, eyes sharp. "The West is not a compass," he continued. "It is a shadow of what once was. You demand we follow your direction while you walk in circles." The audience froze, not out of confusion, but recognition. The old narrative was cracking. The curtain had been pulled back. Traoré pressed forward. "We were taught to believe the West was wisdom. But all we found behind your sermons was greed, behind your democracy, control. Behind your aid, chains." The silence in the room grew heavier. "And now," he added, "you shout orders hoping we still listen. But listen closely, Mr. Trump, even your own people have begun to whisper doubt. The fire you started to control others is now burning your own foundation." Trump's face tightened. "You mock us as villages, but it is your cities that crumble from within. You call us poor, yet it is your wealth that comes at the cost of your soul. You claim to lead the world, but even the world no longer follows." A standing ovation began, not from diplomats, but from those watching online. The Global South reposted Traoré's words with captions like, "We found our voice," and "The empire has no clothes." African youth created music remixes, digital art, and poems around his speech. A line from Traoré, "We bow to no one but truth," trended for weeks. Western analysts scrambled to respond. But there was no counter to conviction. The camera zoomed in on Trump's face, tight, red, wordless. "Traoré?" Still smiling. After the summit, Trump retreated to a private press room filled with Western journalists and advisors. His tone shifted, no longer commanding, but rattled. He tried to spin the moment, "He's just a loud voice from a small place." But the media wasn't buying it anymore. The West had lost control of the narrative, and Traoré had stolen the mic. Across the Atlantic, Traoré stood on a podium in Ouagadougou, addressing a roaring crowd under the open sky. "They say we are nothing," he began, "but they fear our silence more than their own screams." Trump's backers rushed to damage control, issuing press releases, clips edited out of context. They branded Traoré reckless, radical, a threat to global order. But those labels no longer carried weight, because the people had already chosen a different truth. "Let them call us dangerous," Traoré said. "The lion was dangerous too, until you caged him. But now? That cage is rust." He turned toward the youth. "You, the children of Africa, were told to speak English, French, and silence. But today, we speak courage." The crowd erupted. Meanwhile, Western diplomats privately admitted something they'd never say aloud: the age of unchallenged dominance was cracking. One aide whispered to a European ambassador, "This isn't about one man. It's about the world refusing to kneel anymore." Trump, watching the broadcast from a secure location, clenched his fist. He wasn't just losing an argument, he was losing the illusion of superiority. The West had mocked Traoré for his military fatigues, his youth, his refusal to play by the rules. But it was that very refusal that made him magnetic. He didn't beg for a seat at their table. He flipped the table over. "You built your empires with our gold, our blood, our stolen tomorrows," Traoré declared. "And now, you expect gratitude?" He paused, pointing toward the sky as drones flew overhead. "We're not asking. We're not kneeling. We're building something you can't bomb, truth." The world was watching. And this time, Africa wasn't just reacting. It was rewriting the script. At a high-level economic forum in Geneva, Trump gave a thunderous speech packed with warnings and bluster. "The West is the only hope for order," he bellowed. "Those who defy it, fall into chaos. He didn't name Traoré, but he didn't have to. The audience knew. Later that evening, in a dusty room in Ouagadougou lit by oil lamps and a flickering projector, Traoré streamed the speech to his closest advisors. He leaned back, arms folded, unmoved. Then he smirked. That man thinks volume equals vision. Outside, a massive crowd had already begun to form, anticipating a response. Drummers beat in rhythm as people chanted under the night sky. They weren't waiting for permission, they were waiting for ignition. Traoré stepped onto the balcony. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried like thunder. Trump says the West brings order. He forgets we remember what that order looked like: stolen crops, chained hands, burned villages. He paused, letting the silence breathe. And now, he asks us to kneel before the West. I say, look again. The West is on its knees, begging history not to remember. His words crackled through radios, echoed across phones, spilled across timelines. People in Brazil, India, Palestine, Haiti shared the clip. A fire was catching. Meanwhile, think tanks in Washington scrambled. How do you fight a man who doesn't play by your script? Traoré wasn't asking to be liked. He wasn't negotiating for trade. He was dragging the entire stage into the street. Trump's team responded with mockery. One aide posted on social media, "The jungle barks again." But the comment backfired, exposing not Traoré's savagery, but the colonial rot still haunting the Western mind. Let them mock, Traoré later said in a closed-door meeting. Because they can't copy courage. He stared at a map pinned to the wall, lines drawn by dead men. Then he took a marker and drew new ones. We're not fighting for inclusion, he said. We're fighting to outlive them. CNN ran with the headline, Traoré mocks Trump in global rebuke. Fox News called it anti-Western provocation. But for millions around the world, it was something else entirely: vindication. Trump, in a rally in Texas, raised his fist and declared, "They will bow. They always do. Power is tradition, and tradition is ours." The crowd cheered, but the echo didn't reach Africa the way he hoped. Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré sat with students from the National University. They showed him memes, clips, reactions, some funny, some angry, all electric. One student looked up and asked, "Why do they think we'll bow?" Traoré's answer was simple. Because they confuse silence with surrender. That night, in an emergency broadcast, Traoré went live. Behind him, a wall of portraits, not of Western leaders, but African revolutionaries. Sankara, Lumumba, Biko, Amilcar Cabral. Trump says bow. But our ancestors died standing. So, we rise, not to attack, but to outlast. He continued, voice steady and deliberate. The West kneels already, not to us, but to its fears. To its own reflection in the mirror of history. What they see isn't power. It's decline dressed in flags. The video went viral in minutes. Duolingo added African proverbs to its daily lessons. Fashion brands launched "Resist" collections using prints from Burkina Faso. Protesters in Paris spray-painted "We don't kneel" outside the U.S. Embassy. In response, Trump tweeted at 3:17 a.m. Traoré equals clown with a microphone. To which Traoré replied the next morning with a photo of Trump kneeling at a church, Bible upside down, during the 2020 protests. The caption read, "We don't kneel for cameras. We kneel to bury our chains." Washington advisors panicked. Every insult turned into a badge of honor for Traoré. Every dismissal became a rallying cry. His words were now printed on backpacks, sung in rap verses, and etched into murals across Dakar and Nairobi. Traoré didn't just reject Trump's order. He rewrote the story. One where power isn't volume. It's memory. And the world was starting to remember. The Western world expected silence. Instead, it got an earthquake. Following Traoré's viral broadcast, Western leaders scrambled to downplay the impact. U.S. officials called it rhetorical noise. European commentators labeled it populist theatrics. But beneath their polished statements, there was unrest, not abroad, but at home. African youth poured into the streets with posters reading, "The West bows to debt, not destiny." African intellectuals published essays titled, "Post-colonial, post-fear." Even critics of Traoré began whispering, "He says what others are too scared to." In response, Trump launched an emergency press event. His message was sharp, and unmistakably American. Traoré is a loud man from a weak country. The West builds, they beg. They kneel when they need us. The camera cut to a close-up of Trump's stern face. But it also caught a reporter smirking in the front row, the kind of smirk that says, "This isn't working anymore." An hour later, Traoré went live again. No script. No set. Just him under a mango tree, speaking directly to the world. "You claim we kneel? But your boots have lost their shine. You shout, and no one listens. You threaten, and we laugh. The world doesn't fear you anymore, it pities your noise." The clip shattered viewership records. TikTokers looped his line, "We laugh," over slow-motion edits of colonial statues being taken down. High school debaters in Johannesburg used his speech to win national competitions. And then something unexpected happened. An anonymous whistleblower from within the U.S. State Department leaked documents labeled AfriRed, Media Risk Profiles. The report listed Traoré as top-tier symbolic disruptor, warning that continued viral messaging poses existential threat to U.S. narrative dominance in Africa. That leak exploded across Reddit and X, formerly Twitter. Journalists, scholars, even late-night comedians weighed in. Stephen Colbert joked, "We used to export democracy. Now we're scared of Wi-Fi from Burkina Faso." But Traoré didn't laugh this time. He ended the week with a quiet address. They wanted our silence. Instead, they got a mirror. And they don't like what they see. The West hadn't lost its power. It had lost its grip on the story. And Traoré was holding the pen now.